First, I'll kick it off and handle some of the logistics housekeeping items. You ready to go?
Yeah, we're ready to go, Mark. Do we have everybody? Did everybody come in?
All right. Great to see everyone. Thanks for attending. Welcome to the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Glad folks were able to attend today, considering the massive snowy conditions in the past few days out there. Today is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. I would just like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting that is being recorded. A meeting agenda is available on the Public Service Commission's event calendar and also on the task force webpage. In an effort to maintain audio quality, please mute yourself when not speaking. I also ask that any members of the public be mindful of their audio and remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting other than during the public comment period. I'll go ahead and do a roll call for those that are members of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Bob Abrams.
I am here, Mark.
Thank you, Bob. Biko Baker. Kwame Barnes. Marta Bechtel. Brittany Byer, let me know she'll not be able to attend today. Sal Carranza.
Here.
Thank you, Sal. Lori Collins. Angie Dickinson, let me know she'll not be able to attend today, as well as Emily Dittmar. Russ Falkenberg.
Here, Mark.
Thank you, Russ. Chris Herjong won't be able to attend today. Gail Hike. Barbara Koldos. Chris Meyer.
Here.
Thank you, Chris. State Senator Mark Kleiner, staff. Jose Martinez. State Representative Mercer, staff. State Senator Ratcliffe, or staff. State Senator Paffer, staff. Mike Rave. Rachel Shumlin, let me know she'll be running a little bit late today. And Steve Schneider, let me know he won't be able to attend today. Michelle Schuler. Brett Schuppner, let me know he will not be able to attend today. Josh Shell. Chet Streeb.
Here.
Thank you, Chet. State Representative Udell, or staff. And Chad Young, let me know he will not be able to attend today. I do not believe I missed anyone, but if I did, could you please let me know now?
Lori Collins is here.
Thank you, Lori.
Marta
Marta.
Bechtel's here.
Thank you, Marta. Anyone else? No, I think we're good. All right, Chris, if it's okay, I'll just go in the public comment.
That's fine.
Now is the time where we allow for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make a comment during this meeting. Members of the public may soon unmute and make a public comment should they desire. I do ask that public comment remain brief and also pertain to the subject of broadband access. You may also use the chat function in Zoom to make a public comment. I will ask for public comment now. Second call for public comment. And final call for public comment. Hearing none, as a note, written public comment is also accepted on an ongoing basis. We have directions to do so on our task force webpage. I will now hand it over to Chris to lead us through the rest of the agenda. Chris?
And like a good leader, I'm going to hand it right back over to Alyssa to talk about PSC updates. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Happy to see you on this snowy Wisconsin day. I'm just going to give the BEAD updates. We hit a BEAD milestone this morning where we sent out our first BEAD grant agreement. So, if you remember, we had an NTIA approval, we had a NIST approval. We've been working with the awarded providers to get their grant agreement scopes and all the pieces together. And we definitely don't have all of them out the door yet, but we got that first tranche sent. So we are hoping to get those executed and all the next steps, which I guess are, oh, it's on here. The next steps are NEPA for almost all of our projects. They will be working through the National Environmental and Historic Preservation process, submitting some GIS status to us and kind of doing their onboarding. But we hope some projects will have a nice, easy time through NEPA and have their projects started later this year, and most projects started next year. The other update that I wanted to give folks, and we've talked about it last month, is there's a BEAD allocation to the state of Wisconsin. That's $1 billion. There's our BEAD deployment awards. That's $700 million. And there's this delta or difference. And that's been referred to as the non-deployment funds. NTIA had planned to issue guidance by a March 11th deadline that they had in a executive order from the White House. They posted an update on March 6th that they weren't going to make that deadline. And after having really robust participation in their listening sessions, they were going to take longer to give states non-deployment guidance. That said, we're still really hoping the task force can start thinking about it. So it is on the agenda later today, but we don't actually have written federal guidance on non-deployment yet. And can go to the next slide, and I think I get to pass it. Yes, I do.
Yep.
Thanks. And I'm going to pass it to Katie. Thanks.
Can we get moved to the next slide? There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the Broadband Intelligence Product Owner at the PSC. And I'm going to talk about the Wisconsin Broadband Almanac platform that's been updated with some improved functionalities. We've integrated some drill down summaries by county and municipality. And the availability data is now integrated with our Wisconsin broadband map. So the source availability data now comes from BDC as of June 30th, 2025. And all the in-progress locations are as of January of 2026. Our affordability and adoption stats are will be as of 2025. Those are going to be coming as we wrap up the year 3 refresh that the BCG team is on to discuss today. Next slide. The new broadband construction tab within the Almanac is a good representation of the various broadband funding sources. It now offers an overview of the awarded grants funded across the state. And there is also a built-in functionality to filter by the specific enforceable funding commitment now. You can go ahead and move to the next one. And something that we had also been asked about often, we've now integrated this new feature with an Internet Service Provider Territory tab, which allows the user to create a map of the ISP coverage by technology as reported in the BDC and referenced in the Wisconsin broadband map. So you can also select now by served, unserved, or both and create a full statewide map that produces the service territory by each internet service provider. So these are just a few of the new functionalities that we've created within the new platform, and we're excited for the new data that's coming from BCG to get that updated and integrated within the system as well. And now I think there's time for questions if anyone has some.
Any questions?
All right. And if not, I think we're moving on now to what I kind of led in about. The Broadband Intelligence team is happy to introduce the folks over at Boston Consulting Group to provide an update to this team about the work that they've been doing within this year 3 refresh.
Great. Okay, happy to take it from here. Nice to meet/see everyone. I know that the BCG team has presented to this group before, and I see some familiar faces. So thank you so much for having us back to share the updates of our year 3 refresh. So you've got some of us from BCG on the call, and we can intro ourselves as we present. But I'm Anna Mancia. I'm a principal with BCG in our public sector practice and focus most of my work on infrastructure and broadband access. And we've got Ben, Majid, Emma, Kelsey, and Matt also from the team on the line. So you'll see each of us walk through this. So we're really happy to present the results of our year 3 refresh. And I'll give some upfront context just since I know it's been a year or two since some of you have interacted with us and some of you were definitely part of the year 1 work that we did in 2023. So let me start with a quick update on just what we're going to do and context with our engagement with the PSC. And then we'll go into findings across access, affordability, and adoption. And then we should have a few minutes at the end for Q&A. So just context of what, the BCG team has been doing with PSC, given the ongoing funding allocations in Wisconsin, and here's some examples on the left-hand side of funding allocations in recent years, most notably BEAD. We've been engaged with the WBO since 2023 across access, affordability, and adoption. And so on the access side, really about enabling stronger and more accurate data to drive decision making in broadband deployment. So, taking the fabric data and understanding where are optimal areas for broadband infrastructure expansion. So, in 2024, for example, we helped the PSC understand project areas for BEAD applications and grants to really understand where are the unserved, underserved populations in Wisconsin, and where should we continue deploying infrastructure. And then on the affordability and adoption side, it's really about broadband equity and just making sure that broadband is provided to those most in need. So this is just driving affordability and adoption and also optimizing funding allocation for digital equity, connectivity, literacy, et cetera. So we did our original project in 2023, and then we've done an annual refresh of the analyses ever since. And so this is the year 3 refresh to measure progress and compare back to 2023. So we have some really exciting results to share with you. And then just to give an overview of the analyses that we've done, and here's where we focused for year 3. So on the access side, we focused on served, underserved, and unserved locations and comparing to previous fabric versions to assess where may BSLs still be unserved or underserved in Wisconsin, and how has that trend changed over time. And the good news is that the gap has definitely been closing, and we're seeing a higher percentage of served households. And then also comparing advertised speeds to experience speeds. So we've done a lot of work with the Ookla speed test data as well to understand where might speed test data show unserved or underserved speeds versus what might be advertised as served in the fabric. And then on affordability and adoption, there's 4 analyses that we have typically focused on here. So affordability gap is the average price of available broadband compared with ability to pay. So understanding where people might not be able to afford broadband and looking at pricing data across the state. Broadband cost burden is understanding where subscription prices are unaffordable for residents. So this is the real comparison of income to broadband subscription pricing. And we worked with the PSC team to set a threshold to understand where it might be unaffordable. And then also the socioeconomic characteristics behind that. So who is facing broadband cost burden the most? And we've split that out by age, race, income, and other demographics. And then take rate is on the adoption side. So understanding broadband adoption rates over time in Wisconsin, and then how has affordability impacted this? So where can people potentially not afford broadband, and how is that impacting adoption rates? Also looking at that by socioeconomic characteristics. And then we have this term of underconnected households. So households that cannot fully participate in the digital society. And then we're looking at reasons behind why they might be underconnected. So device ownership is an example of that. So I'm going to pass it to my colleague Majid to give us an overview of broadband access. Note that we'd love to send these slides offline, and there might be some pages that we're not going to fully focus on just for time's sake in this presentation, but you'll get a copy with executive summaries and more text if you're curious.
Cool. Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. Majid Alivan. I'm a senior data analytics manager with BCG, specialized in geoanalytics. Been part of this project for the past 3 years. As part of the analysis that Anna mentioned was basically evaluating the fabric data, advertiser speed vs experience speed. Within the past 3 years, we have been working with roughly about 2.3 million BSLs in Wisconsin, and we are seeing a huge improvement in terms of the coverage, meaning a lot of BSLs are showing served speeds of 100 download and 20 megabits per second of upload. So in year one, about 20% of the BSLs were considered unserved and underserved. And based on our latest analysis, using the latest version of the fabric, that number shrank to roughly 11%. So about 245,000 BSLs right now considered as unserved and underserved. And as we know, over 97 and 99% of those kind of underserved and unserved are in rural areas, respectively. This analysis doesn't include satellite coverage, specifically Starlink, but we have basically the other pages explained what has been changed for the coverage for those technologies as well. So if you move to the next page. Cool. So this is basically the evaluation of service disposition using all broadband technology, excluding unlicensed fixed wireless and also Starlink. As we are seeing, as I mentioned, comparing a 2022 and 2025 version of the fabric, which right now is V7, we are seeing only 11% unserved and underserved. Interestingly, Starlink after 2022 showing a full coverage, 100% served across all the BSLs, other than like 300 out of 2.3 million, only 300, roughly 332 exact, are not covered. But that's a good news for the state that Starlink now have 100% coverage with served speed. And if you move to the next page, and this is the breakdown by the technologies based on the latest fabric. And you will see huge improvement in fiber and fixed wireless coverage. In 2022 and 2023, we saw about 32% of the BSL were covered with fiber. Now that has been increased to 49. So 15 percentage point increase for the locations and the BSLs who have access to fiber service speed. And we also see huge improvement in terms of fixed wireless coverage, about 29 percentage point from 14% in year one that we did the analysis to 43% coverage. And as I mentioned, Starlink covers essentially 100% of all of the BSLs. Cable remains the same and similarly to copper. So all the other technologies showing slight differences or staying the same. But fiber and fixed wireless were the key points that key technologies that show huge improvement within the past 3 years. Move on to the next page. Now, as Anna mentioned, first part of the access analysis was about evaluating advertiser speed. And as we know, a lot of those reporting, due to some errors, inaccuracy, might not actually show the actual speed that users are seeing when they're using internet. That's why we evaluated the experience speed. We use Ookla data in the past 3 years to evaluate the experience speed. Starting year one, we were working with 4.8 million tests and 1.1 million users. Right now in year three, we had access to the 3 years of data, which included about 14.2 million tests and 2.8 million users, which shows huge improvement. It helped us to evaluate experience speed for a broader geographies in the state. And gives us a much more confidence in the areas that we see differences between advertised vs experience speed. Move to the next page. Overall, if you look at basically the tests solely, we see again improvement across most of the ISPs in the States. If you look at the top 10% of the user speeds, all of them are providing the served speed across the ISPs. Even actually Starlink provide that kind of served speed with the top 10% of the users. But if you even look at the median of the speed test, meaning 50% of the test, we'll see most of the ISPs are showing that kind of improvement as well too. Fixed wireless was a bit nuanced across those Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile that we combined them into this chart, which is like the green dot. We'll see the drop in terms of their performance at basically top 10%, but they're still providing the service speed. In 50th percentile with the median, we will see after 2024, beginning of 2025, we see service speed across all of the ISPs, including Spectrum and Starlink. Let's move to the next page. Yeah, this is actually our BCG's IP and proprietary approach to evaluate experience speed using the Ookla data. For some broader context, Ookla data, when we get it and we receive it as a commercial data, doesn't have the actual location level view of the experience speed. They do sanitize the data, they do truncate the data. So we had to develop a methodology to give us a confidence comparing advertised vs experience speed. Based on our analysis, about 280,000 of the BSLs that are advertised that serve are in geographical areas that potentially users are experiencing underserved speed. And there are multiple reasons for that. Sometimes it's just a signal loss. Sometimes it's the Wi-Fi basically problems of the users not being able to get the actual service speed. But most often the problem is some network problems, and we identify geographical areas for the state to look into. We identify which ISPs are part of those geographical areas that users are experiencing underserved speed, despite the fact that the advertised speed is served. And we developed an end-to-end solution for the state to be able to replicate it with all of the latest speed test data as this ongoing kind of data that coming to the state. And it's just a geospatial file that you can double down, zoom in, go to the area, see which ISPs are in the yellow and red spots in the screenshots that we have for the maps, and potentially flag for those ISPs for the network performance issues. And that was basically bulk of analysis comparing advertised and experience speed. As I mentioned, 20% of BSLs roughly there are in areas that users are experiencing underserved speed. And this will lead for those kind of users that are in underserved unserved area. We will see they are like spread across the ISPs, like Spectrum, Verizon. You will see at the bottom about half of a test that you're receiving from Ookla is done for Spectrum, basically tech, and that's why you will see high number of users we have identified in those geographical areas that serve speed is not experienced. But yeah, overall, the trend is similar to the share of tests and users. So it's across most of the ISPs, some better and some low. Most of the time, for these ISPs, the upload speed is the challenge, which we have a deeper dive for the state with the complete documentation, how to use that kind of data. Most of the time, upload speed has been the challenge, but based on the previous slide that I showed, speed test data shows those upload speeds is getting better and better. And at top 10%, they're always served. So the 50 percentile or median of those are going to be served as well 2025 moving forward. I think that's the last page for the access. Happy to answer any questions towards that.
Yeah, we'll save questions for the end, and then we'll focus on the affordability and adoption analyses next. So we'll pass it to Ben.
Perfect. Hey everyone, Ben Thornton, BCG out of Boston. I did a lot of the affordability work with the team. And so like Anna mentioned, we have some kind of executive summary slides here at the beginning that will probably be good to go over offline, but I'm going to cover a lot of the content in these summary slides, throughout the next 10 minutes or so. And so with affordability, that's the confluence of kind of, plan availability and demographics and income. And so our first step in this piece of work is looking at the ISP pricing. And so this is a survey, some research that we've completed each year, looking at ISP websites and calling ISPs to gather information around what pricing they're offering at different technology types and speeds. And what we've noticed coming into this year three refresh is there's definitely been an increase or a decrease in pricing across a number of ISPs for Wisconsin, both at the served and underserved level, with much more of that decrease happening at the served speed level. And so this bodes well for cost burden, as we'll see in a little bit. But with this ISP price reduction, I think a lot of this is being driven by some macroeconomic factors around inflation, but also a lot of more kind of territory expansion dynamics and just increased competition as there's more ISPs in the state. And so that's kind of the first initial takeaway for the affordability is pricing is definitely decreasing. And if we look at this over time and at an urbanicity level to kind of drill down a little bit further, you'll see each colored bar here represents a different year for the average minimum price of a BSL, and this is representing served plans. And so you can see, for every urbanicity, we're seeing this price decrease occur, which is, I think, good news and getting us to the point where the average cost of a served plan for this most recent year, 2025, 2026, is around $51 across the state. But you can see that the highest price plans are in those rural areas where the majority of the BSLs are. And so that's kind of the main takeaways for served speeds. And then a slightly different story for underserved speeds. So in this case, if you look in aggregate across urbanicities, the lowest kind of cost plan per BSL has increased a fair number across these urbanicities. And what we've seen is this is probably mainly driven just by kind of shifts in technology and ISPs potentially encouraging people to switch to the more higher served plans and of different technology types. So trying to get away from copper DSL plans, as well as potentially cable, and shift people more towards the faster fiber plans. Perfect. And then kind of the final component we looked at for just the pricing and affordability gap component was trying to understand competition in certain areas. And so for each BSL, we looked at what ISP plans were available and trying to understand what that minimum price was to see how much competition was playing a factor in pricing for customers. And you can see here that for those BSLs that only have one ISP present, the minimum average price for a served plan was $56. Whereas as you add in more ISPs, more competition of varying tech types, you can see that price decreased down to $48. And so there's definitely a competition element. And in addition, the graph on the right disaggregates this by urbanicity, and you can see how, those areas that do only have one ISP option are definitely driven mostly 68% by rural BSLs. So that's kind of where we see competition happening the least. Great. So kind of taking affordability to the next step from parsing to cost burden. This is essentially looking at the minimum average price available to a household and comparing that with their income and using this benchmark rate of 1.17% of their income that we have set as a minimum price as like affordable broadband, which works out to be about $75 for 2026. This is where we look at understanding how many households would be cost burdened based on the plan availability. And so on the left, we have our 2023 year one results, where 53% of households that have a served plan available were cost burdened based on their income. And so you can see here on the right, the 2026 results where that has decreased significantly, by 22% to get us to 31% of households being cost burdened. And a large part of that, I think, is driven by the decrease in ISP prices, but also heavily impacted by increases broadly with inflation and the Wisconsin incomes, basically. So it's kind of a twofold factor of prices going down, but incomes going up. Perfect. And this is kind of a summary page that moves away from some of the cost burden and cost burden and like financial metrics and more into take rate. So this analysis, like Anna mentioned earlier, is looking at how many people are subscribing to broadband that do have access to it. And so on the left here, you can see that we've taken our Axiom household level kind of demographic data that also includes kind of behavior-based data around device ownership, broadband subscription, participation, et cetera. We built a model to estimate take rate at the BSL household and population level. And so these for year three, take rate is increased slightly up to 93% of households, 91% of BSLs, and 94% of population, which also is pretty well in line with the census estimates for the latest census. And if you go to the next slide, we also kind of looked at a view comparing take rate with cost burden to understand how much of take rate might be driven by cost burden and the price of plans and people's incomes. And on the left, we have our 2023 results. On the right is our new 2026 results. And as you would expect, if we just look at the households that have not subscribed to broadband, which is our take rate metric, and look at how much cost burden exists for those households, you can see that that cost burden has decreased significantly. It's almost cut in half. And so that's a really positive sign overall for affordability as the prices have been changing. We've also done a lot of different demographic cuts across education, race, ethnicity, income, of course, and also age. And so sharing some insights as well around take rate, trying to understand what might be driving certain aspects of take rate. On the left, one thing to point out, I think, is there's definitely a high correlation with education and take rate. And so you see that play out in terms of those that have high school degrees and also even more advanced degrees, tracking well with higher amounts of take rate. And then on the right, also pointing out, I think challenges around, age groups that are, more elderly and trying to understand how, or the fact that like they are subscribing less to broadband compared to their relative share of the population. Perfect. And then the final piece, kind of drilling down into those underconnected households that we see that are not subscribing to broadband. We're trying to disaggregate what might be driving that beyond just cost. And so that is where we looked at device ownership and digital literacy, which digital literacy is essentially using indicators around app usage, computer ownership, interest in services that require internet subscriptions. And so what we've seen is that, with take rate increasing, there is a kind of lower effect of, or I guess like a lower segment of device ownership being a factor. And so you can see the device ownership segment has decreased, meaning that we're kind of reaching the point where those that don't subscribe to broadband, more of those don't have a device, essentially. At the same time, our digital literacy scores have increased from year one on the left to year two. driven, I think, partly by just, digital topics being more popular in society and more useful. So I think we're seeing some interesting takeaways for underconnected households.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay. I think we have one more slide just summing up key takeaways that I'll cover, and then we'll open it up for questions. So yeah, just to kind of summarize everything we went through, since I know we showed you a lot of graphs there. In the Fabric V7, 11% of BSLs are unserved or underserved, and this is a significant improvement since it was 20% in V2 when we started. And vast majority, 99% of unserved, 97% of unserved BSLs are in rural areas. So that's really been our focus area. Fiber and licensed fixed wireless have seen significant increases in served BSL counts as well. And as Majid had mentioned, Starlink now covers 100% of BSLs with served speeds in the latest Fabric data. And then when we're thinking about the usage of Ookla data and comparing advertised served versus experience served, the alignment has really improved from year one. So year one is 2023. So it improved from 64% to 79%. And we also double clicked on BSLs that are advertised served, but the Ookla data is showing clusters of un or underserved data. They're largely concentrated in rural areas and largely cable technology. And then on affordability and adoption, so we see a clear urban-rural split with the 2026 pricing. Rural served plans are 13% higher than urban, but underserved plans are more expensive in urban areas. And Ben got into some of the reasons why we might see some of this served versus underserved pricing changes. But we did see a material decline in served prices since 2023 across urbanicities. And then we have 24% of BSLs or 30% of the Wisconsin population with served plans available are cost burdened. If some of you were with us in 2023, we had set that 1.17% income thresholds. So that's 1.17% of monthly income. And happy to answer questions about that. And then the burden rises to 34% of BSLs with underserved plans available. And then the take rate, so 93% household take rate where broadband's available. So that's 1.81 million subscribed BSLs, 171K unsubscribed BSLs. And as we saw, like cost burden no longer significantly impacts take rate in the same ways that it did in previous years. Burden and non-burden households both exhibit a 93% adoption in 2026. So this is definitely an improvement since 2023. And then for the 7% of households that are still underconnected or non-adopted, 42% lack a computer internet device and 26% are scoring low on digital literacy. So I know we just threw a lot of information, data, graphs at you all, and this is just a summary of all the work that BCG has done. Would love to open it up to questions from the task force in case there's anything you want us to go back to or anything to clarify.
Lots of information. Some of the questions were answered as it was presented. And some of the questions that I had is, the reasoning for different adoption rates among age or race or economic status, and that was answered. So I don't need to answer that. One thought that I had is on the pricing, and I wonder, adoption must have an impact on pricing, especially in rural areas. The less people are willing to connect, to adopt, the pricing available to those who would like to would logically go up. Isn't that correct? Or I'm reading this differently? Because for providers, obviously, they want people to adopt. Yeah, and if there's not enough people adopting their product, they will have to raise the price to make up for the difference. That's just a thought that I had. I don't know if I'm right or not. It's just something that came when you were explaining, those issues. I thought, well, pricing must have some kind of, impact on, on adoption, right? Or vice versa.
Definitely. I think there is an element there. Plus, I think it's a matter of like tech type. So
Oh,
as
okay.
fiber expands into more rural areas, I think that'll help make the economics make more sense versus maybe like fixed wireless plans covering a lot more of those rural areas or similar for Starlink and satellite. Yeah.
So it has to do with whether they're using fiber or cable or any of the other that might be
Yeah.
a little more affordable
Yeah,
or
and you bring up great points, and we primarily looked at it from the lens of for the people who do not adopt broadband, like how many of them are not adopting because of costs. So they would like to adopt, but they cannot because it's too expensive. And you bring up a great point, Salvador, of it could be the other way around as well, where prices are higher because people are less willing to adopt broadband. We didn't really look at it from that lens as much as the first one, but I agree that that could also be a factor at play, that ISPs have to be, more expensive plans because they have less customers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, but thank you for the answers. We're very good.
It's difficult to know who is leading the cart or the horse for some of those
Exactly.
questions.
Right.
Anna, I have a question that takes us back to slide 14.
Okay.
With the exception of Airstream, I don't see Wisconsin rural, call them independent ISPs, on this table. Is that because the Ookla data was missing?
No, we
Yeah,
just selected actually the top one basically to show. In the report that we have provided to the state, we have all of the ISPs basically in the list. We just, for the
Okay.
sake of the space, we just provided this.
Yeah, this is just the top.
So then if I go to slides 21 through 23 and look at the
pricing?
the pricing, then all of those rural independents are included in
Yes.
those slides in that workup. I just wanted to check because a lot of our responsibility is to make sure that everything is counting what's going on in the rural areas. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all in the data. We just selected a subset of it for some of these slides, but it's all in the pricing data. Just one note on the pricing data is that we did pricing for served and underserved plans across Wisconsin. So we got every plan in Wisconsin across every ISP and technology type and plan. We did not include unserved pricing. So anything below 25.3 in the pricing analysis.
Right. Back to slide 14, is the data available to us on how some of the smaller Wisconsin companies did?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and feel free to work with the PSC if you have like specific questions on that one.
Okay, they have that information now?
We're
That's what I
still
was
working.
concerned about.
Yep, we're getting all the handover material from BCG, so yes, that will all be in hand at the PSC, and I'm happy to answer those questions moving forward.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Anna.
So I just have a couple of questions. One, the fixed wireless, do we have any thoughts or theories why we saw a decrease in performance?
That's a really, really good question. We have discussed this. We have went through these things as well. Maybe Matt is in the call if you have any kind of perspective on that part. But generally, it's less certainty on our end why it's happening this. But again, it's not across all those three. Like I would say, like AT&T showing huge drop, for example, compared to the other two, but it's picking it back again up, at least for the latest years of data.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had is, our numbers look great, lots of wonderful improvement. Do we have any comparables like for neighboring states or the nation as a whole? Is there any, how it looks like we're doing great. I'm just wondering how our neighbors are doing as well.
Yeah, we kept this analysis focused specifically on Wisconsin, but I did do some comparisons to other states at the beginning of this, and I think Wisconsin is just pretty much in line with how other states have been performing. We haven't gone deep on this, but to just we've been super Wisconsin focused, and we've gotten the fabric data, UCLA data, pricing data specifically for your state.
All right, thank you.
That Illinois and Minnesota in particular spent a lot more money ahead of all of the BEAD discussion on putting fiber in rural areas. So it's reasonable to expect both of those states to be just a little bit ahead of us. But that doesn't mean that they deserve more credit, except for their legislatures advancing the money earlier.
Lori Collins here. I just have a question about the fixed wireless. And maybe this isn't really that significant, I don't know, but it looks to me like the data starting in around 2024 is more focused on mobile fixed wireless versus terrestrial fixed wireless. And that could make a difference in those speed fluctuations.
For the analysis that we had, we only used the fixed terrestrial one, no mobile data at all.
Yeah, and just on this one, right, Lori and others I know who brought it up, I think what's hard to parse is we don't see how, they were using their different spectrum bands and build outs and things like that, right? As AT&T and others in particular have really pushed, what they've done on fixed wireless and sort of offering it for sale. They've gone from, areas that they had, more spectrum available to less, I think, over time. So it's a little bit hard for us to know their network sort of planning against that, which may be just what we saw in 2024 as they've really ramped up the expansion front there with AT&T getting more in it. But I think I don't know if we'll get to a perfect why without really, really, really going deep and trying to parse it out, area by area, is it like for like in the same census block, et cetera. But it's also just gotten busier and more congested.
Any other questions? Okay, great. So yeah, we'll try to send the slides offline in the next couple of days. We've been having some email issues with with PSC, but we'll try to get the slides shared with this group, and then feel free to work with the PSC team if there's specific cuts of the data or questions that you have that come up, and they can always reach out to us as well if they need help answering some of your questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on in our agenda. Great presentation with some good updated information. We have group discussions, and as you know, Jessica looks different again this month. Jessica can't be with us, so Patrick is with us. Did I lose Patrick? There's Patrick. Patrick is with us this month to lead us through our group discussion. I can hand it over to him. Patrick, take it away.
Thanks. I'm not Jessica, as you can see, and I'm community development in Brown and Kewaunee counties, and Jessica had asked me to go through this with you, and so
Not seeing your screen yet, Patrick. There we go.
now you should. Yep. I clicked on the video instead of my screen. So we're going to be continuing with the work that we've started in the previous months, building towards recommendations for the future of broadband in Wisconsin. And we are going to talk about the definitions we looked at last time, which is future-proofing, future and oversight. Then we're going to do some with the round one breakouts on the discussion of the use of the non-deployment funds that was mentioned earlier. That's a new task to take a look at. Then we'll be doing some round two, which will be in the past month we did a short-term actions and the long-term goals as two separate breaks, but this time we're going to do those as one. We're still going to do the same process, and then we'll do a round three where we'll be brainstorming for two definitions, one of those being legislative and state funding and policy, and the other one for emerging technology readiness. And then we'll be going over some of those next steps. So this is the definition that we had from developed from the last time. It's on future-proofing infrastructure and oversight. And like the previous definition we looked at, it did have two parts. And so this one is ensuring the physical network is future-proof and that the state's dollars are spent effectively and transparently. And we asked for you to brainstorm some descriptions of the definition. The first one being infrastructure, resilience, and sustainability, as developing a consistent long-term plan for network upgrades, especially in areas without fiber, to ensure that Wisconsin's technology remains current and sustainable for decades. The second part of the definition being oversight, accountability, and transparency, establishing clearer processes for allocating funds and reporting results to the legislature, ensuring every state dollar is maximized and the public clearly understands how investments are made. And we're going to take a look at that again and see if you have any comments on that definition. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the statements or the ideas that we brainstormed in the previous meeting and how those can relate to the definition that we have above. So are there any reactions, additions, subtractions, changes that you see with that definition of future proofing and oversight?
I don't think there's a change that I'm recommending here, but I know that we had a bias towards fiber, and I know that some of the regulatory changes at the federal level changed to de-emphasize fiber a bit, and that infrastructure title mentions looking at areas especially for without fiber. I think that's still appropriate for us, but I just wanted to raise that because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, or Alyssa, or whoever's still with us, but I thought that originally when we said that, we have a preference for fiber, that was something we had to kind of edit on the fly after the new administration came in. Is that correct? Yeah. So I think it's still appropriate. We're going to prioritize those areas that are underserved from fiber, but I don't know if that needs any editing. That's the only reason I put it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was also my initial thought for keeping up, and not only with the infrastructure and sustainability for future proof, but the policy changes that might impact the way we go about it, and whether there's something here in the definitions that would account for, like Chris mentioned, policy changes at the federal, even at state level, that would impact our ability to say, prefer fiber or do any of the other things, because that might impact our, funding as well. I don't know. That's the first thought that Chris brought up, but I thought the same thing, policy changes that we could keep in mind.
So we're okay with the way it looks now, but just keeping in mind that policies could change in the future. Are there any other reactions in addition to subtraction changes? Well, not hearing any, I think we can move on to the next. We have a pretty full agenda, and we can move on to the next part of our agenda, and that's the going to our breakout sessions. So the first breakout is on the non-deployment funds, and we're going to be discussing the questions of what uses of the BEAD non-deployment funds would have the most visible impact on Wisconsin residents within the next 3 years, and what do we need to do now, and what do we need to have in place now that like data and key partners, so that Wisconsin is ready to move quickly once non-deployment funds are approved. And non-deployment funds are those that are not the building of the infrastructure, but the other aspects of the BEAD funding. So you have about 15 minutes, about 12 minutes in the room. So we'll be putting you with your facilitators to guide you through that discussion.
Pat,
And
Pat,
yes,
can I interject just a little bit?
sure.
I just want to add a little bit more to the non-deployment because it was on my slide before and I maybe didn't do the best job explaining it. And so I just want to make sure so non-deployment it actually was just called other uses in the original infrastructure law. And it was listed as things like internet adoption, affordability, devices. And then the last line of that was anything the Assistant Secretary of NTIA, finds reasonable to meet the program goals, which is really what NTIA is working on now. But I think what commission staff are really hoping from the task force is this will be the last report, right? The governor, we have an election, and this will be the report on the shelf when these dollars start coming and getting released to the state. And so you as task force members, if you want the legislature, the next governor to look when those non-deployment funds get to the state and see, well, what did this task force think we should spend that money on related to all the goals and the other things and so I just wanted to put that frame of, there's all the allowable uses, but it's really like imagine the next state legislature, imagine the next governor taking down your task force report and opening this section. What would you want them to read for your recommendations? These questions are great. I just wanted to make sure people understood the allowability and what staff is really hoping task force members will come give us some good ideas about. Thanks for letting me interject.
Do we know? Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask, do we know the amount that we have for the non-deployment funds?
$300 million, assuming I imagine there might be some churn in the broadband deployment projects as you sort of get underway. There's always a little bit of over, unders, etc. So yeah, 1 billion minus 700 million.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks for adding to that, Alyssa. And Mark, are we
Yep, 15
ready
minutes.
to go into the
15 minutes and I'll open those rooms now.
then again, we'll be discussing those or calling the play-by-play as the work groups are in the breakout rooms on what's happening, and then we won't be reporting out as a group, but we will be able to. The recording will be available, and the results of the notes will be available.
Yep, we're looking good on time, Patrick. So we should be able to get through all the discussion that we had planned, which is great.
It's good.
How long are they in the breakout rooms?
15 minutes.
So they'll be returning around 212 or in that area.
Mark, it's Marta. I don't appear to have been assigned to a room because I
Thanks,
switched
Marta.
my
Yep,
computers.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I'll throw you in a room.
All right. Thanks.
There you go. You should be good.
So room 2 has begun to work on that, and they have for what uses the BEAD non-deployment funds would have the most visible impact on Wisconsin residents the next 4 years. One of those is that everyone has devices that they need and can use the broadband connection to connect and search, but have the training to use those employment, education sites. And then also ensuring that households have adequate technology to optimize broadband connections.
Yeah, well, it looks like in room 1 we got some good input from Chris and Lori, and then room 2, Russ is speaking.
Room 1, we have our assistance funding, looking at replacing affordable services. And discovering discounted device programs.
Then we got in room 2, Bob's making some comments, and room 1, Sal's making some comments. We only got the 2 rooms, Patrick, by the way.
Oh, okay. I thought we had 4. So then room
Yep.
2, a cybersecurity and training spot to spot bad actors, and internet safety training when not to give out personal information.
Just talking in room 2 right now, and Sal in room 1 making some comments.
So room 1 has digital literacy programs being one of those visible impacts on Wisconsin residents, especially especially with nonprofits offering those digital literacy programs.
Room 1, we
And
got
room 1
Lori
is
doing some comments in room 1. In room 2, got Marta. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, room 1, they've moved on to the next part of the question, which is what do we need to have in place now? Data, key partners, etc. So Wisconsin's ready to move quickly once non-deployment funds are approved, and they have partnerships with nonprofits and libraries for digital literacy programs. Room 2 is still discussing the first part of the question. First question.
It looks like in room 2, you got Bob and Marta having a discussion, and Christina maybe looking for clarification, asking questions.
Room 1 is adding to the most valuable impact on Wisconsin, the fund skilled digital navigators, having fun or funding skilled digital navigators. May want to send a reminder to room 2 to look at the second question.
Will do.
Though there seems like you're having some good discussions in there.
Yes, you got Bob speaking right now and Russ.
Looks like room 1 is discussing that second question of what to have in place now. They're recommending that we have plans and proposals in place about what the solutions and structures about the solutions and structures to use the funding. Room 2 looks like they've moved on to the second question of what do we need to have in place now? And they are suggesting broadband labeling for hardware. And possibly a safety index.
Would be curious to see an expansion on that explanation for that suggestion.
Yeah, I'm speculating that possibly it is to let people know how much broadband that hardware is using.
Yeah, just if I forget, remind me because we're doing great on time right now. So
Good.
Even though we're not doing the report outs, we still can ask a question.
Sure. So room 1 was looking at the plans and proposals for the solutions and structures to use the funding. And so they're looking at plans for data, sustainability, addressing or providing recommendations. Plans would also look at what funds, if any, the BEAD money is replacing, and to show a return on investment.
Got Chris in room 1. He's speaking, and room 2, you got Bob that is having a discussion.
And room 2 is moved on to the second part of the question on what to have in place now, a broadband label for hardware, which will find out what safety index means. And now they've added equipment, education, and more sophisticated uses for research necessary for the report to be useful. And room 1 is clarifying that to show an investment, planning for that, and putting in proposals is to look at the showing a return on investment is quantifying why using BEAD funds is a good investment.
That must be Sal's comment, as he's been talking for a minute here. And room 2, Marta's doing the talking right now.
In room 1, they're also looking at things to put in place now as the preparation with partners. Room two on what to have in place now is a brief report to legislators on the factors of what a good internet experience looks like. That includes equipment, providers, and other aspects of that internet experience.
Marta, stop talking room two, and now Russ is speaking. Got Lori in room one that is speaking away.
So in room one, they added data now exists on how existing funds are being used to fund current programs and activities throughout the state, such as available affordable services, what's still needed, can it be added to improve it, the prep with the partnerships includes the plan to use partners to help collect data. They also earlier had looked at the first question and added some clarification to the funding. Skilled digital navigators would include training and actual work. So both training and actual work. And in room two, they're looking at what to have in place now. They have a brief report to legislators on the factors of good internet experience looks like, the equipment, who's preventers and providers, and they're also added to that letting the public and legislators know the basic things they need to have a good internet experience.
You got Bob Tucker in on room two, and room one is Lori. And after Sal just got done speaking.
So yeah, in room one there. Did some word adjustments, it looks like, what funds, if any, the BEAD money is replacing, and make it permanent if possible. So they added the making a permanent aspect to that.
We're about a minute and a half away. So they should be getting a warning at 30 seconds. In room one, you got Sal speaking. Room two's gone quiet. Now Lori in room one.
Looks like they're confirming what they had put down, and getting close to. They might have gotten a warning now that the time is
Yep,
ending.
correct. Correct. I saw both facilitators are talking at the same time. So always a kudos and shout out to the facilitators that help with these. Yep, here they come.
So now that you've returned from the rooms, we've been
Not
giving.
oh,
They
here
haven't completely
they,
returned.
not room one.
Oh, room one is still.
They're going to the final second.
All right.
Here they come. They should be coming now.
So now that you've returned from the breakout discussions about the BEAD non-deployment funds, we've been looking at what has been taking note of from those discussions, and we had one question for a group for the room two. You had put down the broadband label for hardware and then a safety index with a question mark. We had some questions out here in the main room of what you might have been describing there.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone from the room would like to explain that. I kind of just took the note down. But there was a discussion on how, even if you have a good connection, you could have some hardware like a router that is outdated or not sufficient to handle that connection. And it would be nice to have some kind of like a broadband label equivalent to hardware. And then someone had mentioned a safety index, so I just wrote that down. But I believe that's what the group was getting to. If anyone wants to clarify anything else on
I
that.
think you summarized that quite well.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. And other times we've reported out on what was taking place in the rooms, but we have a tighter schedule today, so we're going to move on to the next part of our program, which is looking at actions for the definition that we had from our previous activity, which, to remind you, was looking at future-proofing infrastructure and oversight. So we'll be going into breakouts again to tackle both those definitions. And specifically, we're looking for actions and what are 1 to 3 specific actions, quick wins, or policy adjustments that the state could do right now over the next 12 months to make a difference in the priority area. And we'll look at both those priorities and what are partners, who are the partners that must be involved to make those quick wins, actions, and policies work. And the second part of this breakout will be on the future headline and actions. So imagining that it's 2030 or beyond, and Wisconsin is a national leader in these priorities. And to write down a news headline that describes the success of the future actions that contribute to it, and who are the partners that must be involved to make this work. So if there might be the temptation to say something broad like the state, but it would be preferable if you could specify the particular agency or agencies or offices that might be involved with that. So those strategic partners could be as specific as you can, if it's a union or a technical college or a tribal leader, to make that work. And we're going to give you 12 minutes for each of these, so 24 minutes in total. Mark and I will be out here providing a description of what's taking place in the rooms. And as he's setting up those rooms, we're looking at these rounds to be the now and the future for infrastructure, resilience and sustainability, and oversight, accountability, and transparency.
Yeah, and I'll give them 24 minutes total. So just for both questions to answer those. So we'll see you guys in a bit. I'm all good to let them in, Patrick?
Yep.
All right. See you guys in a bit.
And again, they're in the 2 breakout rooms. Room 1 and room 2. So as they've entered there, they're taking a look at the tasks that's before them, and I'm sure they've started to discuss what that how to put that into place.
Yeah, right off the bat, right at the beginning, you could see Sarah and Christina starting to do their facilitation, but right away in room one, you had Sal and Lori already making comments. Room two starting to talk and discuss as Bob is making some comments.
So other notes that's in to room one is to look back at the past minutes we had in the conversation, had had for this conversation in previous meetings. And I believe there were some of the thoughts of infrastructure and oversight that were discussed when we put the definitions together. Examples of what
Rachel
those
Rachel
actions
Shumlin
would
has
be.
showed up, so I'm going to throw her in room one. There you go, Rachel. You should be good to go.
So room two has started writing notes on what one of those specific actions might be. Operations and maintenance that make sure there's transparency and some benefits to awardees to make sure that they offer best possible services. So that's looking at infrastructure, resilience, and sustainability. Room two is looking at the oversight and accountability aspect of the definition. An action they have is subsidies to be used for displaced workers. And the partner to accomplish that would be DWD, the Department of Workforce Development.
Russ is talking in that room right now. Those are Russ's thoughts. There was some good conversation. Looks like that was going on in room one, but now looks like it's gone a little quiet. You got Sarah facilitating there, so she might be right in the way. You got Bob in room two, that's speaking, and then Lori in room one right now.
Yep. And Lori, looks like they're looking at that first part of the definition of infrastructure. And they've started writing down their specific actions. And their thought is that we're still going to have areas of the state who will still be served by Starlink or fixed wireless because of their rural location. So their action would be to figure out how to get fiber and fiber-like fixed wireless to those locations.
You got Lori still talking in room one, and Bob is talking now in room two.
And figuring out how to get those fiber and fiber-like fixed wireless to those rural locations could be expensive. And room two has a specific action now for the infrastructure, resilience, and sustainability. Their action is operators operations and maintenance that makes sure there's transparency and some benefits to awardees to make sure that they offer best possible services. The specific partner to help with that is subrecipients receiving money, conducting a procurement process to ensure the best deal on equipment.
One, you got Lori speaking. Like Christina's doing some facilitation in room 2. Oh, no, Bob is speaking in room 2.
So in room 1, they've completed that specific action that they were, and that had to do with figuring out how to get fiber and fiber-like wireless to the rural locations, and the expense involved with that. The answer to the question is, how are we going to get those rural locations service well above 100, 100, ideally to 200 to 300 megabytes per second range, and can it be done sustainably? And the
Great.
partners involved with that are the State Better Business Bureau grants that are earmarked for specific projects to cover these areas, or broadband, sorry, state broadband grants that are earmarked for specific projects to cover these areas or another funding source, and an ISP willing to do the work at the established price point.
All Lori's comments because she's still going in room 1, and Bob is going in room 2. A lot of Lori and Bob on this question, on this part. Oh, Marta's chimed in room 2.
So they're working out some of those details before they type them into the notes, I believe. So they're at least having some discussions between themselves.
Marta and Bob looks like they're having some discussion. Oh, now Chris has chimed into the conversation with Lori. Here comes Sal in room 1 as well.
So they added a little more to the partner of an ISP willing to do the work at the established price point, and they're looking for that ISP willing to accept extras along the way at a reasonable cost to the customer.
We still got Sal in room 1. Marta speaking in room 2. Looks like Christina's for some clarification there. We're asking some questions. Bob's chiming in now in room 2. Sal in room 1. Lori starting to chime in room 1 as well. Sal in room 1 and Bob in room 2 with Marta chiming in room 2.
So it looks like in room 1, they've had their initial discussion as to what to put on for their specific actions. And so now they're looking at a state created extra funding source to cover extra infrastructure remaining.
We got Rachel chiming in room 1. Christina speaking in room 2.
So they're looking for the state to create an extra funding source to cover extra infrastructure remaining from expansion projects and a funding source to be included in the yearly budget.
Like Lori and Rachel in room one are having a conversation.
Yeah, looks like they're talking about the partners, that they would be involved with that. One of those partners being the legislators, another being the ISP providers.
So we got Lori and Rachel having a conversation, Christina doing some facilitation in room two.
Room two is having, looks like they're having a pretty good discussion. They just haven't been able to put them in the notes yet.
Yep, as Russ is talking in room two and talking with Bob. Oh, Marta's chimed in now. Yeah, it looks like they're having some real good discussion in room two. And Chris talking in room one.
So the state, they're looking for the action in room one to be state create an extra funding source to cover extra infrastructure remaining from expansion projects and drop fees. Funding source being included in the yearly budget.
Chris was in room one, just wrapped up talking for a bit. Now Lori is speaking.
How are we on the time?
We're under the halfway point. So looking pretty good. Pretty good on.
That sounds good.
We're gonna do this, Patrick. We're gonna get through everything on the discussion. All right.
Yeah, we had some questions about that, but it's going well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us again and stepping in for Jessica. Big shoes to fill. You did doing a good job.
Yeah. Thanks.
Got Lori speaking in room one. Now Sal in room one. Marta in room two. Now Bob in room two.
Looks like they may be looking at the second part of the definition, oversight, accountability, and transparency.
Got Bob in room two, Sarah in room one. Maybe asking some questions, clarifications.
And in room two, they've addressed some of the future plans, the future with a future headline of heightened rural adoption and specific partners to engage to make this action possible is UW Extension. And another future action headline is the program development and workforce development being that strategic partner for that in the future.
Chris talking in room one. Lori just got done speaking. Marta's talking in room two.
So room one is adding on to their partners for the state creating an extra funding source to cover extra infrastructure, remaining from expansion projects and drop fees. And they had the legislator, ISPs, and community foundations are a new addition to that. Local lending institutions that would be willing to fund a low interest rate. And it looks like they've moved on to the second part of that definition of oversight, accountability, and transparency.
Good. As we're under the 8-minute mark, tougher time left. We got Bob in room two speaking, and Sarah facilitating in room one.
We may want to send a note to room one in particular that they should take a look at the future headlines if they haven't started already talking about that. And in room two, they started expanding upon their oversight specific actions of communicate the allocation of funds and spending or completed milestones.
Bob speaking in room two. And Rachel in room one now.
Room two may be thinking about who those partners are for communicating allocation of funding and spending or completed milestones.
Room two, you got Russ speaking right now. And Sarah speaking in room one.
And since we sent them a note, room one may be looking at the future headlines, their discussion as they move along.
Yep, Sarah's still speaking, so she got that much to speaking on that transition. And we got Bob in room two speaking.
The headlines that room two has for the future are: the Department of Workforce Development identifies record job applications with better matching of skills with open positions. And then DWD sees record participation in job creation using broadband.
Russ had just got done talking in room two. Now Bob is speaking, so it's
so
good.
those future actions are heightened world adoption, with UW Extension being a partner with that, and program development with workforce development being a partner. And room two has a second headline of Wisconsin's population is increasing with younger residents in rural areas due to broadband expansion.
Looks like room one was just doing some thinking on that second part. You got Rachel speaking now. Lori.
Room 2 has now added the partners for their right now actions, the current actions that can be taken of communicate the allocation of funds and spending or completed milestones, and the partner with that would be the PSC.
You had Russ speaking in room 2 and Sal was speaking in room 1. And we're almost at the 2-minute time, so we're under 3 minutes there, Patrick.
Okay. And room 1 now has their headlines. The first one being climate resilient grid powers connectivity, Wisconsin's infrastructure transformed to withstand record-setting weather events. Kind of appropriate for this last weekend.
Let's say, yeah. Would you guys get up there near 24, 28 inches?
Yeah, 27 is the official number. I thought I had about 30 in my front yard, so it was steep. And then the second headline they have is legacy systems, but bridged states for forward-looking technology standards ensure every household hits 100 gig speeds by 2035. And the specific actions related to that are to expand to public, explain to the public the progress we make, how the work has benefited them, and the partners would be the newspapers and media outlets.
We got Bob speaking in room 2. Room 1 looks like Lori's speaking.
Room 2 is for their headline of Wisconsin's population is increasing with younger residents in rural areas due to broadband expansion. They're looking at the existence of work and employment in rural areas, and the partners would be DWD, empowered employers through rural broadband that makes commitments to generating jobs in the area, and UW-Madison Extension, and then promoting entrepreneurship and affordable living. And partners would be those promoting real estate in those rural areas.
And everybody should be coming back now.
Mark, this is definitely a tougher breakout than the first one.
We could tell, but appreciate the input. I see you did some conversation and definitely some debating discussion in there.
So we're going to move on to starting the definitions. So we're looking at 2 different definitions, similar to the 2 parts of the definitions we did before. So we have the legislative and state funding policy, creating a necessary political and financial mechanisms to sustain all of their efforts after the federal funding waves end, and then emerging technologies and readiness, preparing Wisconsin citizens and economy for impact of the next generation technology. So we'll take a look at that first definition for legislative and state funding policy.
And for this, we're not going to go into a breakout room.
Right.
We're just
Yeah.
going to do one big group, and we have the next 10, 12 minutes. So throw it back to you, Patrick. Go ahead.
So we're looking at this, and we'd like you to think about when you see these words, what comes to mind, and there's no wrong answers, no debate needed. Just if you can either you can unmute yourself and tell us what kind of what comes to mind of if there's some kind of policy we're referring to, what else we might be concerned with regarding this theme of legislator and state funding policy.
Well, I think what you're hoping for here is have the legislature really feel strong about investing in rural Wisconsin and perhaps low-income Wisconsin to make sure that that there's a payout, and that payout is jobs, it's connectivity, and for our last breakout, it is not to see a drain of young people from rural areas.
Thanks. Other words come to mind when you see this definition that we're looking at?
One of the things our group talked about was having a fund in every biennial budget for broadband projects slash adoption. All of the things that we've been talking about. Our biggest concern is whether there's going to be any kind of funding available now that BEAD is happening, but what happens after BEAD? And so we'd like to see that become a standard part of the budget.
Any other thoughts, ideas on a definition for legislative and state funding policy?
Lori, is there anything that we can do at a state level for bonding for ISPs? I was thinking about that from the community standpoint and their ability to bond and what they can bond for in utilities. Is that a barrier for any of our smaller ISPs?
Yeah, it can be. Some ISPs have worked with towns who have then established bonds for a project, but it's not available directly to ISPs as far as I'm aware. So yes, that could be very helpful.
Mhm.
I should add that one of the things we talked about is things down the road. We talked about climate and sustainability from a climate perspective, and one of the things that will climate proof an infrastructure network or network infrastructure, sorry, is to bury everything, which is going to take a fair bit of funding and work to move fiber lines from pole attachments to buried locations. But that's one thing over time that that's going to require a fair bit of funding, and it's not really something we've been talking about yet.
So if we moved on to our other definition that we're looking at, the other definition, and we can go back to the first one if something comes to mind. The second definition we were or the second part that we're defining is emerging technology and readiness. So preparing Wisconsin citizens and economy for the impact of the next generation technology.
Mhm.
So what do you see with these words? What comes to mind?
Well, a lot of the things that we talked about as well, and it also impacts the legislative policy, is having more transparency and information with the public about what we're doing, how we have made progress over these past 3 years, how we can make more progress in the future, how is this benefiting them, get more data from organizations that are working in providing this kind of access to the public about how this has impacted the lives of the people that we are serving through access to to broadband. So I think we haven't done enough to actually explain to the public or to inform the public about the things that are being done and that are benefiting them. I know they're benefiting them enormously and will in the future. So I think that's something we can do way more.
So are there, when you look at this definition, are there thoughts on specific organizations or people that were worried about not being ready?
Well, I think this also gets back to the broadband Sherpa discussion that we had many months ago. Having somebody available at the county or even municipal level, that can filter questions and get responses and work with local groups, local employers, local schools to boost uptake and maybe best standards for equipment so that there is good broadband experience by customers that help them make better use of the products sooner. That's a mouthful.
Other thoughts on this definition?
I like that comment, Bob, just while everybody's thinking. There are a few counties such as Lincoln County and Dork County that have broadband folks that are doing surveys and convening of roundtable groups to address those and do those next steps. So I like your thought.
When we look at this definition, what do we mean by next generation technologies?
Or perhaps 100 gig routers at connection points rather than 10. Perhaps equipment that does Wi-Fi 6 or 7 standards instead of 4, that kind of stuff.
My mind goes to AI automatically because one thing you learn in the broadband world is that it's always changing. And so I think we have to think of our broadband Sherpas, our broadband navigators as really more permanent institutions or groups in our communities. I don't think they're going to go away. When we think we have all of our citizenry and business owners up to speed on how to use their tablets and their iPhones and their laptops to Zoom with their grandchildren, the work isn't done. So I think that's one thing that I don't know how people view those things right now. But I firmly believe that they're going to be a permanent part of our, whether it's municipal governments or whether it's libraries or wherever it's happening.
All right, Patrick, get the final
Thanks.
thought and then
Is there a final thought on this definition or the previous one, the emerging technologies or legislative and state funding policies that you may have thought of?
and if not, we'll revisit this at the beginning of next meeting for discussion. So something to think about.
So on our next meeting, we'll be looking at the diving into these two definitions, emerging technology and readiness and legislative state funding policy. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And Jessica Beckendorf may be back, or I may be back, or we both might be here. We haven't quite decided yet. She's had some schedule conflicts, which is why she hasn't been here in person. But we've been working together along with Mark to make this discussions available.
We appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for your facilitation today.
And then I'll turn it back over to Chris to wrap up the program.
Mark, you want to walk us through next steps and we can adjourn afterwards?
Yep. Next meeting is April 15th at 1 o'clock. As Patrick mentioned, we'll get into wrapping up the legislative and state funding policy and emerging technology readiness, and then we'll get into those task force report themes and recommendations as we're already in that point in the year. It's hard to believe, goes by fast. So a reminder that registration is required for all meetings, and stay tuned for that agenda. Chris, I'll hand it back to you for final words and adjournment.
All right, we had a small but mighty group today. Thank you all for your participation, and enjoy the last days of winter, which we hope are going to be gone this weekend when the temperatures warm up. So have a great rest of your week and see you next month.